So our next speaker here is to inspire, encourage, and give us some tools that we might all need during difficult times that we know farming can be. A marketer by trade and an entrepreneur, Lesley Kelly farms with her family on their 7,000-acre grain farm at Watrous and is the head and the heart behind the alias High Heels and Canola Fields, where she dispels myths about agriculture and brings consumers and farmers together. So Lesley has been a leader in advocating for mental health in agriculture, and she's been part of the Bell's Let's Talk campaign that's raised over $149 million for mental health initiatives across Canada, and co-founded the Do More Agriculture Foundation, whose mission is to break barriers, support all farmers in taking care of their mental health and well-being, and bring much-needed resources to the industry. So she is also a co-host of What the Farm, it's a podcast, and also a director for Sask Wheat. So please join me in welcoming Lesley to the stage. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I am very excited and grateful to be here at a Sask canola event because I go by the alias of High Heels and Canola Fields. I created that about 5 years ago, and I chose my favorite crop to be part of my name because of the few things that canola has done for our farm and for the industry and all of agriculture. And then so excited to also see that Sask barley is part of this event because I always like to share with everyone. I love barley so much that we created a snack food company using the barley grown on our farm. And then loved it even so much more as we were going through the seed guidebook one year. I was very pregnant and we hadn't thought of a name yet for our second boy. And I went through and I said, Copeland. And my husband said, no, we can't grow Copeland barley. We can't. We've tried that, done that. I said, no, that's a baby name. And then he thought, he's like, what? And I'm like, we just got our kid's name from the seed guidebook and named him after barley. So I love to share that with everyone, and just shows the passion and the love that I have for this industry. And that goes into my presentation, the passion that I love that I have for the industry, but also our farmers, because I know, and this includes my family, our farmers have gone through and are going through some incredibly tough times. So my goal for the next 30 minutes is to share the things that my family and I have learned in planting those seeds of hope and love to instill and encourage us to do small changes on our farm that will have lasting and positive impacts for our farms and then for our farmers around us. So like Glenn said, I'm Lesley Kelly, and I've had the opportunity to do a few cool things in my life, build a snack food company, and then share my love and passion for agriculture through High Heels and Canola Fields. I've done that for about 5 years now. But then what I realized through sharing my farm story and my passion and love for agriculture, I also got to share and have conversations with farmers all across Canada and the US. And I realized that a lot of our farmers were going through hard times. And having those conversations can be so very important. So myself and a few others from Saskatchewan, we co-founded the organization called the Do More Agriculture Foundation. And our goal is to champion the mental health of all of our Canadian farmers, to bring awareness to the industry about mental health, to create community and space where we can have these conversations just like at events like this, and then to build and bring resources to our farmers and their farm families. So what I'm going to do for my presentation is I thought maybe do a little bit of a Q&A, but you're not in the hot seat. You don't have to answer or ask any questions. That I went through my most top questions that I've received through my blog and at events. So I'll do it in more of a fireside chat, but the fireside chat will just be with me. But if you have any questions at the end, I'll be sticking around for a few minutes, but then you can also connect with me at High Heels and Canola Fields or Do More Egg if you have any more questions. So the first question that I get a lot is, how has mental health impacted you and your farm, and why do you speak about it? I didn't know much about mental health about 10 years ago, and it was until I saw each and every one of my family go through some really hard times. So everyone in my family, every person, every individual is living with a mental illness or is living with a mental health struggle at one point in their life. I went through postpartum depression after having Copeland. My little sister in the pink dress, she's an amazing member of her community. She's an EMT, and she lives with borderline personality disorder. My dad, one of the most forward-thinking farmers that I've ever known, optimistic about agriculture in the future. And when he was battling cancer, he lived with anxiety and depression through that time. My brother in the black, he witnessed a very horrific and fatal car accident a few years ago and is living with PTSD and anxiety. And then my husband, an amazing father, husband, great coach. He lives with anxiety and suffers from panic attacks, mainly attributed to farm stress. So I share that not as it defines who we are, but what we've realized is those illnesses, those struggles have made us into the unique and special people that we are. And what I've realized is through our struggles, by learning more about mental health, how we can support each other and ourselves, have conversations, know how to incorporate mental health on our farm, it's brought our family and our farm closer together. And then by me sharing my story and my family's story, I started to hear more about what our farmers in our communities were going through. And only 2% of us grow food around or across Canada, yet over half of us struggle. 60% of us, like my husband and my brother, live with anxiety. 35% of us live with depression. And at times, over 75% of us live with high stress. So I've seen how those impacts can be life-changing for the wrong side, but that I've also seen how learning and doing small changes, planting those seeds of hope, can be life-saving and life-changing. So the second question that I get frequently is, what are the signs and symptoms of someone going through a mental health challenge or living with a mental illness? I'm not a doctor or clinician. I'm a mental health advocate, but what I can share with you is I can share with you the signs and symptoms that I saw my family go through. So we all have mental health, but our mental health might change. It goes on a spectrum from mental wellness to injury to illness. And we can change along that spectrum depending on our life experiences, our genetics, what we're going through. But what I learned is that depending on those signs and symptoms, they can vary, and they vary based on a whole different number of factors. What I saw with my family is a few of those signs and symptoms, but what I look for are three things. When those signs and symptoms are intense, so when your behaviors or actions or emotions are outside of your normal, when they're intense. The second one is when they're long-lasting. So the mental health community, they say give or take 2 weeks or more. And then the third thing that I look for is when it starts to impact your daily activities, your behaviors, or your responsibilities. And I saw those within my family. So my signs and symptoms were I just was very emotional, and I had a hard time getting what I was feeling out. I was very extroverted, but I stopped sharing, I stopped talking. And then with my husband and my brother, I saw them stop eating and stop sleeping, sometimes for days at end. And then I saw them go outside their normal behaviors and become very irritable. Those angry blow-ups, more 9/16 wrenches were being thrown at the farm. And I thought, well, that's very, not typical. So what I always share is those signs and symptoms might vary depending on who you are or what you're going through, or even the illness or the struggle. But know you're normal, and know those around you, they're normal. And if they start to deviate outside their normal, that's when you can start to have conversations or plant those seeds of caring and love and support to help those around you. So the third question is, I'm afraid of not saying the right thing or having the right type of advice. How do you start a conversation when you see someone struggling? And I can totally relate to this because we didn't talk on the farm or talk within the family because of that fear. I thought that, if I started the conversation, that they might be angry or they might be frustrated. But what I learned is in that silence, suffering in that silence can be detrimental, and it was detrimental for my family. So the biggest thing that I've learned is that conversations, planting those seeds of support and care, are life-saving. And you can do it in a few small ways, small changes. And you can open up or start the conversation. If you see someone going through a hard time, the first thing that you can do is go with those signs and symptoms and ask a simple question. I see that you're frustrated. Is everything okay? Or I see you're coming late to the farm the last few days. How are you holding up? Or would you like to go for a drive or for a walk? That's my husband's cue. He loves to, that's his therapy. He loves to go, drive down the gravel roads or the grid road, crank up the music, roll down the windows, not in -30, but in the summer, and that's part of his therapy. But that grants him the grace to say, hey, I see that you're going through someone or something. How about go take some time for yourself? Is everything okay? Are you okay? And how are you really okay? So asking some simple questions just to let someone know that you see what they're going through and that you're there for them. So after you've asked the question, the second most important thing that you can do is to show that you care. And you can do that by sharing some supportive statements, some simple words that can really make a great impact on someone and get that weight of the world off of their shoulders. We all want to be seen and acknowledged and know that we are cared about. So some simple statements like, I'm here for you. I have time for you. And are you okay? Is everything all right? And I'm here. I'm always here, and you matter. You're not alone. I've been there. That sounds really hard, or that sounds difficult. I see the combines broke down. That sounds really hard. You seem frustrated. That sounds really hard. How can I help? So a simple question and a simple showing that you care, a life-changing impact for someone. And I know that it's easier said than done. I've walked this journey lots with my family and my friends, but I would take these hard or difficult or even sometimes awkward conversations out of the silence any day, because I always look at it at the perspective that there's so many things in life that are hard and uncomfortable and awkward, but there's great things in that awkwardness. Think of your first date with someone. Of course it was so awkward, but think of where that relationship went to. Or, the first time getting braces and you're trying to eat or trying to talk and there's food flying everywhere. Awkward, but great in the long run. And the same goes for these conversations. And sometimes these conversations, because they're hard or difficult, they might take a right-hand turn. But by planting that seed, by showing that you care and that you see that they're going through something, sometimes that person might open up later on. So even if the conversation might have gone in a direction where you didn't anticipate, that's okay too. It's letting them know that you're there and that they can talk to you later on. The next thing that you can do in these conversations, so you've asked them, you said some caring statements, the next thing that you can do is listen. And I thought that I was a pretty good listener, so I thought listening was, listening with your ears and saying, yeah, sounds good, yeah. But what I've realized in these conversations, listening with your heart goes so much further and is so much more impactful. And I know this I share the story that one of the most impactful times in all of my mental health conversations and really changed my perspective of how important listening can be is when we first launched Do More, and we were at an event, and there was about 400 chairs in the room. And I thought, if 3 or 6 farmers come, it'll be so worth it. It'll be great. And when they opened the doors, farmers came in, their partners came in, those in the egg industry came in, and there was not an empty seat in that room. And people were even sitting down along the aisles and standing at the back. And as I was sharing our story, there was a farmer in the room. He was directly across from me, and he had his hat down, and he was emotional. He was visibly upset during that whole conversation. And after everyone had left, he came up to me and he said, I'd like to thank you. And I thought, well, why? I didn't feel like I did anything. And he said, I'm going to go home and talk to my wife. You just saved my life. So he didn't share with me his story. I don't know his story. But being in that room and listening to other people share and knowing that he wasn't alone and there was help out there, that he mattered, life-saving for him and life-changing for me, because I realized how important and life-saving just listening can be. What we all need is someone just to sit there with you and be there for you or with you in those hard moments, and like we were there for him in his. So the next question that I get a lot is, this sounds all good. We talk about feelings and emotions, but how do you get a farmer to talk about their feelings? I see my partner or my spouse or my child or, my parent, I see them struggling. And I've tried to reach out and talk. How do you get them to open up? And I saw this in my family as well. We all want to be seen and we all want to be heard. We all want to be acknowledged. But we are learning new skills. This is, communication, it's a hard skill. And all of these conversations can be different. And it's a new skill that we're learning to share about this. And I had preconceived notions that, a lot of our farmers weren't open to sharing. And my whole perspective changed again when it was at another event. And it was one of the first ones that we had ever had. And after we were done sharing, an older farmer had come up to the mic. I think he was about, 85, 90. And the first thing that went into my mind was, he's going to yell at us. He's going to yell. Because we had received some of that feedback online or through social media before with sharing our story. And that was my first thought was, oh boy. But what he did was so impactful. He raised his hands and his fingers and he said, I don't have enough fingers on my hands to count the amount of people, the amount of farmers, my neighbors, my friends, and my family that I've lost to suicide. And it's about damn time we start talking about this. And you could just see the whole room go, because he opened the door saying, hey, it's okay. Yeah, we're learning new skills, but it's okay to talk about this stuff because farming, I love to farm and it's an amazing career, but it is hard and it can be challenging. And I saw that in my husband. It took him over 10 years to really share about his anxiety. I didn't know he lived with anxiety. We saw those signs and symptoms, and we did those planting of the seeds of encouragement. We asked questions. We shared, those supportive statements. But he had a hard time opening up, and it's because, all of our mental health, it's different, and so are our rates, and so are these journeys for all of us. Some of us can share earlier on, but some of us just need some gentle encouragement. But what I've learned is you're accountable to your own mental health, but not someone else's. You can help support them in their journey. You can, take them out for lunch. You can cook for them. You can cut their grass. You can help them with their farm work. You can do so many things, but they're accountable to their mental health. I sometimes get the statement, well, before we just put our head down and worked through it. And absolutely we did. And for some individuals, that worked, and that's great. And that's what my husband did. He put his head down and he worked. He worked so much where then he didn't sleep and he didn't eat, and then he got on a roller coaster. And so for some people, working, doing what they enjoy, that helps. And that's part of their self-care or their therapy. But for my husband, it's the opposite. So knowing that all of our mental health is different and how we take care of each other is different and how we have these conversations, the rates of these conversations, people opening up is also different. But just planting those seeds of encouragement and love, and hopefully one day they'll open up to you, come to you, or someone else. The next question that I get a lot was, we talk about those conversations, but then how did you actually on your farm, or within your family, how did you change the culture of mental health? Was there a little bit of pushback or apprehension? And I would say there was probably more awkwardness because we didn't know how to have these conversations. I didn't know that my brother was struggling. I didn't know my husband was struggling. But it was one day sitting on the deck. It was part of our succession plan. We thought, okay, we're all coming from different areas. My husband and I were coming from Alberta, my brother coming from Manitoba, and my parents were moving to town to retire. So we thought, well, let's just sit on the deck and let's just talk, learn about each other. And that's when I realized, just by sitting and talking and having the opportunity to share, I got to hear about their worlds and their struggles. And that started to open the door for the conversation of having these important conversations. But that wasn't just the pivotal moment. I have some really great leaders on our farm, and it's my parents. My mom, she's the heart of the farm, the main supporter for everyone. And she saw my husband go through those hard times. So she kept saying, Matt, I'm here. Just text me anytime. Or how you doing? Are you eating? Are you sleeping? I'm here. Call me anytime. And he was just having a hard time opening up and sharing. So the one day, she changed her approach, and she slipped him the farm stress line on a crisis card. And it was during harvest. He had picked out his meal, and they didn't say anything. She just slipped it, and he looked at it, put it in his pocket, and that night he phoned the stress line because it was one of the first nights that he had his panic attack, and he didn't know what was going on, so he phoned for help, and they helped him in that moment. They helped him breathe and do strategies in that moment, but also helped him for future preventative measures as well. So I'm very grateful for my mom in being a leader and knowing her role of what support is and can look like on the farm. And then the other leader on our farm is my dad. And he saw, as we were transitioning the farm, our first conversations of succession planning, and my husband and my brother and I, we want to buy land and buy, fancy equipment and do this and this. And my dad was like, well, that sounds great, but let's just take a step back here. And he said, kids, out of the 40 or so crops that I've grown, this is one thing that I've learned. And he said, if you want to be successful, it isn't about how much land you have or the type of equipment you drive. It's about how we work together and how we take care of each other and ourselves. A pivotal moment on our farm that changed our whole entire culture and really put mental health on the agenda as a priority. So we took a step back and built a foundation of a great culture where we can have these conversations. We've learned how to communicate with each other, and I'm so grateful for these words of wisdom that my dad shared. My dad did unfortunately pass away from cancer last year, but he, with his leadership, built us such a strong foundation that we are hopefully able to take into account for the future success of the farm as we, because I've got 2 young boys too, so I'm very excited of what the future has for them. A few examples of what that culture on our farm looks like. So we sat down, we said, okay, so we were told about, we need to learn how to take care of each other and ourselves, but what does it actually look like? And so we created 13 cultural principles, and this is all about how we communicate and how we work together. Because for us, relationships are at the utmost of importance. So for us, a few examples out of the 13 is we value each other's opinions. We hold ourselves and each other accountable for not only our impact on our business results, but also the impact on our people. We acknowledge others often and celebrate our successes. We are open to coaching and feedback, and we have fun. And it's created such a great place for us on the farm where we love to come to the farm to work. We love to be around each other, and it's not perfect by all means, but it's all about progress. So we always go back to these cultural principles at every meeting we share, and it's done us wonders on the farm. So the next question I get, how did you or your family incorporate self-care? And this one was, because this is then puts all those things that we learned into action. And we have so many things on our to-do list as farmers, and now you're talking about like, now I have to put me on there, I have to do things, take time out of all the things, like in harvest and in seeding. And we said, yeah, because if we're not healthy, then our farm isn't healthy. So when we first started talking about self-care on the farm, my husband and my brother said, Lesley, don't make us do bubble baths and yoga. And I said, well, that's something that I might like, but others, they enjoy different things. So it opened up conversations as to what we wanted to do or needed to do, and it changed. It changes in the season, it changes in the day. But it just opened the conversation as to knowing that we need the time and the energy and the space to do these things to fill up our cup. So here's an example. I like to show this fun clip of how all of our self-care looks and feels different.
Creative things that I do.
I'll start again. Sorry about that.
Hi everybody, it's Paul. A lot of people ask me, after a long day of voiceover or writing or doing all those creative things that I do, how do I relax? Well, like many other Americans, I come home and I pet my dog. You see, petting your dog is one of the most relaxing things you can possibly do. It releases a hormone called oxytocin, which reduces stress. Also, it lowers your heart rate and it lowers your blood pressure. Plus, people who pet their dogs are 5 times more likely to live longer than people who just have cats.
I love that video. It brings a smile to my face because you see it and it's like, oh, it's so cute, and then but on the flip side, we did get a dog through COVID. She's not that dog or that type of dog. Great wonders for our self-care. Love to come home, snuggle with her. She's very needy. We love her. But a quirky little video to show that your mental health is different, and so is how you take care of yourself. All of our self-care is different depending on the season, the type of day, what you're going through, and knowing that is absolutely okay. So we first started talking about self-care, and we thought, well, what's a different phrase we can use? And I'm the gopher on the farm during the busy season, so I go for seed, and I go for parts, and I go for everything, chemical and kids and food. So we like to use the phrase, fill up your slip tank, because I also go and I service equipment. And if my slip tank is empty, I can't go and service other equipment. And the same goes for us as farmers, that if our cups are full, if we can do things to fill those cups, that will help us in the future and help us serve others around us, help us be there and take care of each other and those around us. So we started to learn about things that we can do preventatively on the farm, but also during those high stress moments, those panic attacks, and what we can do afterwards. And it's all about just taking the time. It's okay for us to take, whether it's 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, or 5 days, that time is so important to recover and recharge. And I know that when my husband, when he feels anxiety come up, even if he's on the combine in harvest, and he steps off of it and he goes for a drive, we know that that's what he's going through. And granting him the grace, cheering him on and saying, hey, it's okay. If you need 5-10 minutes to take some time to get through this, for sure. And if you need us, then we're here for you. But for us, we cheer for each other, that it's okay if you have a day off or a moment off or a weekend off, because we know that it's healthy for us on the farm. Physical exercise has helped us. I love to cross-country ski, run in the summer, or take walks. My husband likes to play hockey. Breathing exercises, this has done wonders for him with his anxiety and panic attacks, and these could just be 3 big breaths. And you can do these in the office or in the tractor or in the combine. 3 deep breaths can help him through that moment. Positive connections. This, I realized, is so important, especially through COVID, and I noticed that I looked so much forward to spending time that one evening or that one day with friends, And I always laugh about how I've never cooked or roasted so many hot dogs, because that was the only time we got to see people, was having a fire in our backyard. And now I can't look at a hot dog. I love the Harvest hot dogs, but we ate so many because that was the only time we got to see our people. But afterwards, after we saw our friends, our cups were full. So having those positive social connections, that could be through peer groups, social media connections, farmers around you, just having people to cheer for you and be there not only through the good times but also through the hard times is so amazing for your mental health. Laughter and affection is great, and I share the example of affection on our within our marriage. We started to learn about our love languages, and I know this is a farm meeting, but we farm together. I farm with my husband, and I am an acts of service person. So if I went or if I came home and he did the dishes or put laundry in, I'm like, I love you. You're amazing. So I thought, well, that's what he loves. So I would go to the farm and, sweep out the shops, and I would clean all the equipment, and he would look at me and go, I'd be like, what? Oh, we're so different. But then I started to learn that he is a words of affirmation. So by sending texts of, hey, how you doing? Thinking about you. How's your day? I love you. Those would fill up his cups. But knowing that, especially because we farmed together, has been so wonderful for our marriage. And then laughter. We always have dance parties at the house, having the two small boys. We crank up the music, dance around, and then I realize that having the two small boys, it turns into a wrestling match. It turns into a dance fight, and usually one person ends up crying, and it's usually my husband. He gets kicked somewhere. But that laughter and affection is so great and fills up our cup. Creative expression, these are just ways that you can express yourself. So through hobbies or doing activities that you love to do. For me, I like to cook. I like to try out new recipes. My husband likes to woodwork. But just ways that you can express what you're going through, your feelings, who you are, is also great. And then professional help. We sought professional help both within our marriage, within our family, individually, to learn communication skills, but also therapy in those hard moments. A list of resources. The great thing about the last 5 or 6 years of putting mental health on the roadmap within agriculture is there are a lot of great resources that are out there. Just navigating them can be hard. So at domore.ag, there's a list of resources both regionally, provincially, and nationally that you can go to. One of my biggest pieces of advice is to put some of those stress lines or those crisis lines in your phone. Because if you're talking to a neighbor or you see someone within your networks or a family member, if you see them that they're going through a hard time, you can share those numbers quite easily through your phone or have them available to you in a moment of crisis. And that's what my mom did. And the great thing, the 988, that one is new, and that's across Canada as well. The biggest resource that isn't on here is all of us in agriculture, because no one knows what another farmer goes through than another farmer. And by helping our neighbors, planting those seeds of encouragement, love, and support, we can break barriers and break the stigma and be life-saving for those around us. So my last question for all of you today is, what is one thing you hope to take away with? And it's so hard to think of just one because of the importance of this conversation. But what I can tell you is that planting these seeds, starting these conversations, asking those questions is life-saving. It might not be in that moment, but it might be a year down the road, 5 years down the road, or the next day. That what we're doing here, having these conversations at events, at meetings, at our kitchen tables, at our boardroom tables, is life-saving. And that you can do small things, these small things make such a big difference for the short term and the long term for our farmers in the industry. So know that you matter and that there is help and support out there. And these small things, these planting of seeds of love and hope, are life-saving, because we as farmers and in the industry, we deserve to be happy and we deserve to be healthy. So thank you so much. I wish you all the health and happiness in this future season. If you have any questions or need a resource, you can connect with us at Do More Ag, or you can contact me at High Heels and Canola Fields. Happy to be a catalyst or be a connector to what you are looking for or needing. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Thank you for your attention and for your time. Do I have any questions just before I get off, before I run off? Great. Well, you can connect with me through social media, or I'll be sticking around here for a few minutes. So thank you so much for having me.